this is Michaela from Team Retro, where we like retro games and the devices that bring them to us. And in this video, we are blessed with glorious purpose. For this is the Ayn Loki. After a very long wait, Ayn Loki units are finally starting to ship, and I received my Ayn Loki non-max unit this past Friday. And despite having to get over a sinus infection, I was able to get some time with the unit this past weekend. So we're going to do a first impressions video. We'll do an unboxing, we'll take a look at the physical aspects of the unit, and we'll do a little bit of light PC and emulation testing, but the purpose of this video is to kind of just give my first impressions of this device. So let's jump in and let's get to work. So let's go ahead and start with an unboxing. Now, I paid for this unit with my own money, but I did reach out to Ayn and they did send me this white unit out a little bit earlier than the black unit I had originally pre-ordered. And I attribute that to their really good customer service, but I did let them know that I was going to be doing a review on this device. All opinions are going to be my own. Now, I did pay about $500 for this Loki unit because I am an Odin backer. So because I am an Odin backer, they let me use that coupon and they also sent me this case. So let's go ahead and take a look at that first. Right now, this seems to be a nice little carrying case. It feels nice. I do like the Loki logo on the front, as well as the bumps for the joysticks and buttons, as well as the bumps in the back for the unit itself. If we go ahead and open it up, we have a charger, we have a universal adapter for EU, and then we also have a USB-C cable for charging the unit. Now, this also comes with a couple of plastic somethings. I'm not quite sure what these are for, but I'm going to set them aside just in case I do need them in the future. If you know what those are, please let me know in the comments. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the power brick itself. There is a single spot here for one USB-C plug, but this is a pretty beefy charger. I believe this is capable of charging up to 100 watts. Now let's go to the case itself. Again, this is a paper insert here that I believe is exclusive to Odin backers, that has the Odin and the Loki logo on it, and it says thanks for your support. And it's just a paper insert, so if you didn't back the Odin and you still plan on buying the Loki, you probably will get the same case, but not the same insert. Now let's go ahead and open the box itself, and you're going to see the box actually opens from the middle. For some reason, my camera has a hard time focusing on the box itself. It may just have to do with the glorious purpose inside. So let's go ahead and open this from the middle. And the first thing you're going to see is a little insert here with a whole bunch of hotkeys on how to navigate Windows using the controller on the Loki. And through the Loki Command Center, they have programmed a whole bunch of different shortcuts and ways to get to certain Windows functions without a mouse and keyboard. Now, on other devices like the ROG Ally, you can actually program these yourself, but these shortcuts are all hard set. You can't change them. So you have to actually keep this cheat sheet handy or have some of these shortcuts memorized. And so there's only a couple of more things left in this unboxing. The first thing is that the Ayn Loki does come with a screen protector. I'm going to actually set this aside from now because I don't necessarily plan on applying this. And then there's the unit itself. And just lifting it up for the first time, it definitely has a premium heft to it. And it does have a premium construction, and it seems to have a pretty smooth plastic. Not too far removed from Ayn devices that I've used in the past, but it is definitely a very different feel from the Ayn Odin. Now let's go ahead and tour the device, and we'll start here on the top left with the L1 and L2 buttons, and you have quite a bit of travel on the L2. It's more travel than I care for. I like my triggers to be a little bit more responsive, but this seems to be the standard that's happening for controllers and handhelds, so it is something I'm going to have to get used to. The bumper is springy and expected, so that seems just fine. There's a fan at the top, as well as the volume up and down buttons, a status indicator light, and the power button. They're in a very similar place to where they were with the Odin, and then of course you have your right bumper and right trigger. Now let's move on to the front of the device and the full-size joysticks that you have on the front here, and these are very good quality, and they're very comparable to what you would find on, say, an Xbox Series S or X controller. Let's go ahead and grab Callie, and let's use her to measure how thick these joysticks are. They come in at about 14.9 millimeters on the Loki and at about 16.3 millimeters on an Xbox controller, so you're really only looking at a loss of 2 millimeters, so that makes these two joysticks really comparable in size. And while we have Callie out, let's go ahead and compare the face buttons. You're coming in at 8 millimeters on the Loki and about 10 millimeters on an Xbox controller, so you're not losing that much in button size either. So Ayn really kind of went out of their way to make the Loki feel like you're holding a standard controller, and that actually means a lot. That means that they are trying to get a good gaming experience from their buyers. Also on the front here, you have a 6-inch IPS display, as well as start and select and 2 function buttons. Now the D-pad feels like a dome-style D-pad and not a membrane-style D-pad. It has a lot of firm clickiness to it. Now the front-facing speakers are part of the plastic, so if we rub our fingers over them, they should pass the Joey Retro Handheld speaker test, which means that you can rub your fingers over the speakers and they're not going to cut your hand. On the sides, we have the LED strips, which will match the color of the LEDs around the joysticks. And on the bottom, we have an SD card slot, as well as a headphone jack and a solitary USB port for charging as well as video out. And finally, on the back of the device, you have your M1 and M2 buttons, as well as some more exhaust on the back, and a Loki icon that is also part of the LED system, so that will light up along with every other LED here. Hopping on our Asgardian mount and going into Spec Town. With the Loki non-max model, you have an AMD Ryzen 6600U capable of 3 cores and 12 threads, and the GPU is an AMD RDNA 2. This model has 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 RAM, and this model comes with 128 up to 512 gigabytes of M.2 2230 NVMe SSD storage, and there's also that micro SD card slot to expand the storage further. You have a 6-inch diagonal IPS touchscreen capable of 1920 by 1080 with a 16 by 9 aspect ratio at 60 Hz. You also have Bluetooth 5.2, Wi-Fi 6, and a 46.2 watt-hour battery, which is actually a bigger battery than what you would find on the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally. You also have one USB-C port that's capable of charging as well as video out. Now, the Windows setup experience is just about what you would expect from having to set up a Windows device. You're going to have to make an account, whether it be a local account, which I highly recommend, or use your Microsoft account or make a Microsoft account. You're going to have to connect to the network and check for updates, all those things that come with having a Windows device. So I'm not going to bore you with all that. In fact, I plan on making a separate video advising on the best way to set up an x86 Windows handheld. But I do want to make a comment on these LEDs. When you start up the system for the first time, these LEDs are going to be at 100% and they're going to be really bright. And you could see they're so bright that if I actually turn the lights off here, you'll notice not only a ton of light bleed, but you'll also see that the sides are reflecting off of the mat on my table here very easily, and this could lead to a very distracting experience. Fortunately, once you get going, there is a way to adjust this. The other comment I want to make during the setup process is this is a portrait display that will turn things over to landscape. So there is a gyro built into this device. So it is very simple to get this device to play in landscape mode. All you have to do is tilt the device. And given your use case, this could either be very convenient or very annoying. Personally, it doesn't bother me all that much. One thing that does bother me, however, is the fact that when you boot up the system for the first time, the Loki Command Center does not start up right away. So what you actually need to do if you like starting in Steam Big Picture like me is you have to go into mouse mode, you have to hit the M1 button to get into desktop mode, you have to open Loki Command Center, and then you can go ahead and go back to Steam Big Picture and you can use the Loki Control Center overlay over it then. But it is kind of an annoying step for a system that I shut down and reboot pretty frequently. But now that we're in Command Center, let's go ahead and take a look at this custom fan curve. Now, I set this up at the suggestion of H from the Retro Handhelds community. He did a video on the Loki recently, and this was the fan curve that he had set up, which is actually a much better fan curve than what you would get by keeping this in auto, because if you do set this to auto mode, then the fans are just going to go crazy for very simple tasks. which is another small frustration I have with this device. Also, in the command center, we can use the dial in the middle here to set our TDP, and we can also adjust our CPU and GPU, but I like to keep them both at 100%. We can also adjust our volume and our brightness. And if we go down to resolution, we can not only change our resolution, but if we're at 1920 by 1080, we can actually adjust 60 frames per second, 50 frames per second, or 40 frames per second, which we might want to do for certain PC games. And we will do a little bit of testing in this video, but I'm going to save the majority of my testing for my in-depth review once I've had more time with this device. One thing I do want to talk about here is dockability. Now, this device has one USB-C port and it's on the bottom, and most docks are not equipped for that type of setup. So let's say we were going to go ahead and use this stand here. And if we set the system upside down, sure, we can dock it, but now we're going to have a problem where it's going to affect our air intake and outtake. And if you have this top fan pointing right at the bottom of the desk, it's going to go ahead and bounce all that heat right back into the device. So I would not consider this an ideal way to dock this. However, the alternative would be to lay the device flat on the ground. And I also wouldn't recommend doing this because now you have the same problem with the exhaust on the back. And I think that USB-C port is on the bottom because this device was originally marketed to look just like the AYN Odin, which has a form-fitting dock already made for it. And this device, unfortunately, does not fit in that dock. And so if you wanted a device to use primarily in handheld mode, you'll be fine. But if you wanted to plug this into a monitor at certain times and use it as a PC, then you're going to struggle with how to actually dock it. And so that's something to consider if you're looking into buying this device. And so for the rest of this video, we're just going to do some light gameplay testing, followed by some heavier gameplay testing, just to see how the Loki holds up. And we're going to start here with Harvest Moon 64, just because back in the day, this was a very charming little game, and playing it today actually doesn't capture a lot of that nostalgia. There were a lot of typos and some terrible quality of life mechanics that were fixed in later entries in the series, but I spent a lot of time playing this game as a kid, and I still get a kick out of seeing push the start on the title screen. Now let's move on to Rune Factory 4 Special, which is much more up to date, has much better quality of life improvements, and also features combat in addition to farming. Now, both Harvest Moon 64 as well as Rune Factory 4 Special are functioning very well on an 8-watt TDP with that custom fan curve in place. And so if farm sims are your thing, they are going to perform well on the Loki. Here's the obligatory God of War test. This is God of War Chains of Olympus HD running on the RPCS3 emulator. And we are running this at a 15-watt TDP. And even though I don't have any frame rate indicators on the screen for this first look video, this is very smooth gameplay. And I found that I had a very good experience, and I'm not even using the PSP version, I'm using the PS3 version. And I would highly recommend, if you can get away with running the PS3 version, definitely do that instead, because you'll get that dodge to the right stick, and it's a lot easier than playing the PSP version. Also functioning well at a 15-watt TDP is Sonic Frontier, and this is at a 1080p resolution, but I dropped the frame rate down to 40 frames per second, and we are running at low settings. But the gameplay still seems pretty solid, and the graphics still seem very pretty, so I'm actually very pleased with how this game is performing on this device, and it's a pretty solid experience. And finally, because this device is called the Loki, we're going to end here with some Marvel content. This is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order, which is a Nintendo Switch exclusive, and we're running this through the Yuzu emulator. And you could see here at a 15-watt TDP, this game is definitely playable. However, there are some artifacts and graphical glitches along the way, and there are some times where things are going to freeze or stutter due to shaders caching or items loading or something like that. So the game is playable, but it is not a perfect experience. And so there's a lot more to do with this device, and there's a lot more to talk about, but let's at least get some first impressions in. And I'm going to start by saying that I've done a little bit of testing with the AYN Loki, and so far, whatever I've thrown at it, it has handled pretty well. So we need to do quite a bit more testing, but for now, I'm pretty impressed. I'm also impressed with this build quality, not just because of the look and feel of it, but also because I found out that my 2-year old got his hands on it accidentally for about 3 minutes, and it ended up going down a slide and who knows what else. And it's no worse for wear. No scratches on the screen, no damage to any of the buttons. So I'm actually quite happy with the fact that it took a mild beating from a toddler and it looks like nothing happened to it. Also, the case that comes with this is really a nice case. I don't feel the need to go out and have to buy another case for it. On the more negative side, this device is a bit harder to dock, which means you're only going to use this in handheld mode, or you're going to have to get creative with the way you dock the device. I do really enjoy the full size joysticks. They really do make this device a joy to play for 3D content. And these Windows devices take a long time to configure and set up and actually get to where you can play games. And it took me a better part of a day just to debloat and install programs and get everything up and running before I was actually able to do some play testing. The LEDs thankfully have built in controls, but they are very bright. And so you may want to consider not using them if you're going to be playing this device in bed or near a loved one that might get distracted by them. The battery life so far has held up, but I don't have any official battery testing yet to find out just how good this device will last under certain settings. But if it's anything like any other x86 handheld, the higher the TDP, the less battery you're going to get playing that particular game. And I'm running into a lot of bugs that are specifically centered around Windows, like issues with the control center not popping up, some games not playing in full screen mode, having to pull up the on screen keyboard to get to certain shortcuts like full screening a game, things like that. And there are also some other glitches, like I found that RetroArch would sometimes crash with Emulation Station Desktop Edition, but it would only do it if the device was docked. It wouldn't do it if it was just normal handheld mode. And so there are these little glitches and issues that just come with running a Windows device. And while I do really enjoy using the ROG Ally over a device like this, there's something to be said for the size to performance ratio that comes with owning something like the Ayn Loki. And so I'm looking forward to putting this device through its paces and really seeing what we can get out of that 6600U chip. So I'm going to work on this a little bit more and spend some more time with this device in preparation for a more in-depth review. But I did want to get some first impressions and some initial thoughts out while I've had the device for the last couple of days. And let me know what you think in the comments below. Is there something that you want to see demonstrated in that final review? Let me know what you think, and I will do my best to accommodate. And let me know if this is a device that you are considering getting or that you have pre-ordered. And feel free to continue the conversation in both the retro handhelds community and the Steam Machine community. I have a home in both of those Discord servers, and that's where I hang out in between videos. But that'll do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and if this was helpful to you in any way, please be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, bye for now, and don't stop believing.